Please welcome Ron Lobato, who's a product manager from Citibank in the Treasury and Trade Solutions Group. Ron's a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, and he speaks today on veteran resume and interview preparation. Please welcome Ron.
Thank you. And again, I put some flyers on each of the chairs, so if you don't have one, please be sure to take one of those. What's in that, we'll kind of discuss as we go along here, but I didn't want you to write anything down, and you certainly don't have to read that yet. I'm just going to go in some examples, but what I've been asked to do is talk about some of the resume best practices, and you're probably wondering, what's special about Ron, and I've heard all this stuff before, and maybe just a quick background. I've been at Citi now for 3 years, and since I showed up here, I've been contacted by a lot of various veterans through different channels, and pretty much down to the last one, they needed help with their resume. Some better than others, but to be quite honest with you, our culture in the military is so different than what you're going to be expected to do to write something on paper, and through all the various conversations I've had with folks, I think there's a couple of main themes that I'm going to talk through today that is going to hopefully educate you a little bit more. And so maybe to that point, my first statement is the recruiter. Okay, so I'm starting off the talk about resumes with the recruiter. Well, why? Okay. Every recruiter, at least the recruiters I've worked with here at Citi, I feel that they're the gatekeeper. And what that essentially means is their job is to screen or go through hundreds of resumes and narrow it down to acceptable choices. Now, some of you probably heard, about this mythical software program that when you submit your resume online, it gets screened for keywords. And I've had veterans, go into white font, and at the bottom of their resume, they've got like 1,000 keywords that wouldn't appear normally, right? Because of some mythical software program that was going to pre-screen them, so they would pop on some sort of search. And speaking with the recruiters, and we use Taleo here at Citi, as does probably many of the companies that are here. That's the software program that's used when you go and apply online. So I was talking to a recruiter 2 days ago in preparation for this, and I said, well, what do you truly do? When you get assigned the job of filling for a particular business, X amount of positions, how do you go about your job? Right? Again, they're the gatekeepers. You're not getting interviewed until the recruiter feels that you're a good fit for that position. Again, they're not choosing the final person, but they're screening those that don't apply. So maybe that's the best way to put it. They're letting, they're putting to the side those that don't have such a great match. Now their stack is going to have a bunch of diversity in there. Veterans is probably one of those. So I was asking a colleague of mine what he actually does, and he says, well, Taleo, if he goes to monster.com or any of these other job boards, he said recruiters have a search function. So if he's got the task of finding people that are a good fit, for example, in my business, Treasury Solutions, he might go into this search engine and type in the word liquidity out of all the applicants that have applied. And then that narrows it down, just like you would if you were going to try to look up information on the banana tree on Google. You would go and you type in banana tree. You don't want to read every website in the world. You just want to have a narrower scope to start doing your search. That's the exact same thing that they're doing. So the gatekeeper, you got to figure out how do you get to them or how do you get past them, and I think that's really what I wanted to talk about today. But before I go on, it's important to say, though, how many, actually, by show of hand, how many people have been fishing or like to fish? Okay, I thought I was going to be the only redneck in here that does that. So maybe like half, right? Well, when you go fishing, you determine what type of fish you'd like to catch, right? So if I'm going to try to catch maybe a smallmouth bass, then I have to be careful about the lure that I use, that I need smaller hooks. How in the world am I going to catch a smallmouth bass if I got a hook that's 2 inches big? Right? So when you go fishing, you try to find what certain types of fish, not necessarily one exact type, but there might be a cluster of fish that you want to catch. And you know that before you even start putting your line in the water. And in preparation, you've chosen the right bait that's going to catch that fish. And what I'm trying to say here today is, that's your resume. You have to know what jobs you're applying for or that you would like, so you can tailor your resume to get past the gatekeeper. Let me show you something here. And these statistics are also on the handout, but I saw this. Hopefully you can see. Let me try to point it out for you if you can't see the slide. On the left-hand side here, we've got applications by source type. So these are basically, out of all the applications from 2000, this is the statistic, from 2007 to 2012, over about 600 companies, they took all this data, this third-party site here, took all the data and they said, out of all the applicants, how did these applicants get to us? The green sliver on the left-hand side is referrals. And you may not be able to see the number, but it's 6.9% of all applicants came via referral. Let me go over to the right-hand side here. These are the ones that are hired. Now, it's not the green slice on this one, it's the big pink one. 39%, 40% of all hires are referrals. By the way, that's the largest slice, if you can't tell, of who actually got the job. Now, the problem with, the folks that I'm dealing with on a daily basis is they're very astute in social network. They're very astute in generating things electronically, and they feel disappointed because they've applied to hundreds of jobs online. So let's go on that side, right? Job boards, monster.com. Career site, cityjobs.com or whatever our site is. That's the pink and the blue on the left-hand side. Okay? So let me take the career site, right? Those who come to City and apply on our career site, 32%. Over here, I can't really see it there, but it's 21% of all hires come via that channel. I was shocked when I first saw this. And I want to tell you, you must be referred. You can apply all you want on the job boards, that's fine. But if you're not networking and finding somebody inside the company that's going to give your resume to a recruiter and say, this is my referral, if you're not getting that, you're completely cutting yourself off of nearly half of all those that are eventually hired. So Ron, you're telling me that I need to go find people to help refer me to the recruiter. So how do I do that? I was talking with some of the folks here at Veterans Advantage a couple days ago, and they said, would you please tell them what their goals should be coming out of this conference? How do you use, let's talk about today, how do you use this conference today to find that employee that's going to refer you? Well, these companies that are here have one person. And they they may not know the exact role that's going to be a great fit for you. And they may not know anybody in that business, right? But what I'm submitting to you here is that you should have a couple of goals. When you meet the people here from these companies, and my contact info is going to be at the end of this thing, this is your goal. Your goal is to take that person's name and number, and you want to get referred to somebody else. Okay? If they'll help you one-on-one, that's great, but realize that there's one person here, and there's going to be hundreds of folks after this conference going to reach out to them. So make it easy on them. Say, I would like to have a referral to somebody in your XYZ business. Do you know anybody? If you don't, would you please refer me to another veteran? And this is what you're going to do. You're going to talk to that next person in line that you've been referred to, and you're going to say, this is my thinking. I want to go into sales, and this is why I want to go to sales. And let them ask you questions about why. And the reason why I say that is typically when I talk to folks, they'll come to me and say, I want to do sales. And I say, well, why? Well, come to find out, that's just what they were told that veterans are good at doing. It's not really what they wanted to do. And so I ask them basic questions like, do you get up in the morning and do you look at the stock market? As a matter of fact, when was the last time you looked at any sort of market? Why in the world would you want to go to sales and capital markets if that doesn't even interest you naturally? On the other side of the coin, does it interest you if we have an acquisition, if let's say, a big company that you follow makes a large acquisition of a company, if that catches your eye naturally, well, maybe you're interested in maybe the corporate side of the bank, right? Or maybe the Treasury side of the bank. So these sorts of questions about what do I naturally do day to day, what courses do I choose? Even if you don't know the answer, if you can ask yourself or have somebody help you walk you through those questions, then you will naturally start gravitating to certain things. So, back on point, when you get that next person in line, you want to start telling them about you, what you naturally prefer to do. I like to help people, right? I like that in the service, I like being a help. Maybe you're a good fit for some corporate, relations position or something like that. I don't know. There's so many jobs at these big companies, just thousands, right? So that's what you would like to do. So that's the how piece there. That's one goal. You want to define what you'd want to do, and you want to define what company you would like to do that at. And it doesn't need to be one choice. Now here's the reason why I'm telling you this and making a big deal about this right now. A couple weeks ago, a veteran came to me and said, hey, Ron, I heard you help veterans out. Here's my resume. And I said, all right, Marine, what do you want to do? And kind of gives me his line. Okay, so why do you want to do that? Have you considered a couple of other options? Because it does similar types of things. And I said, when I read your resume, I really don't see, again, we'll throw out like sales, right? I don't see anything. I don't even see the word sales ever. Right? You never sold anything, like Boy Scout cookies or whatever, Girl Scout, like nothing? Never sold anything. Well, why do you want to go to sales? So the point that I was trying to make, he said, I don't really want to get too specific because I want to have a more general resume and, that way I'm not limiting myself. And it goes back to the fishing story. Why in the world would you go fishing thinking you can catch every fish out there? There's no way. In fact, what's probably going to happen is you're going to mess it up. You're probably not going to catch anything, which is exactly what I was urging him to do. So I think really having a goal here in Veterans Advantage, trying to figure out who do I network. I want to find out the company that I would be a good fit for. I want to find out the job that I would be a good fit for. So the last piece here, the company. All right, so each of you have chosen different services. Before this, I was heading the ROTC unit at the University of Texas, and I'd have folks from campus come to me and say, I want to be a Marine. I said, well, why? Right? Yeah, that's cool. Uniforms, first, whatever. I could line him up with 6 of my, enlisted Marines that were going to get their commission, and he could talk to every single one of them. And then I could say, why don't you go talk to the Army, why don't you go talk to the Air Force and Navy? And at the end of that process, this person could tell me, by talking with random 6 people from this organization, that, and whatever, which one he or she closely aligned with. And so I submit to you, when you're looking at jobs and companies to go pursue and start your career, that company is a big choice. It's a big part of it. There is a culture. City's a very entrepreneurial, do-it-yourself, no instruction manual, sink or swim type of organization. I like that. I flourish in that. I sought that out. That's a match for me, but that may not be a match for you. Maybe it is. So I would say the other piece is, the more people you talk to in these companies, you don't want to just say, I want to go work for Citi, I want to go work for, Avis or Dell. You have to know why. And you got to be able to explain in an interview, I may fit here because of these reasons. Okay. So let's get into maybe the more specific examples here when it comes to resume, because I definitely think there's some value here. And I'm going to get through this maybe in about 5 minutes or so and leave some time for questions. We worked with NBC, we meaning Citi, worked with NBC, Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and the Military Spouse Corporate Career Network. Those latter 2 are nonprofits. And we wrote this book, Heroes Get Hired, and it's free. We spent about 9 months going through a lot of lessons learned. A lot of people contributed to this, specifically like IAVA, and there's videos. So if you've never had an interview, go to that website, go to the page. This is all electronic, by the way. You can read it on your tablet or computer, or you can print it off on PDF and take it if you'd like. But on the electronic form, you can actually look at a video of a person that's answering the question, tell me about a difficult leadership experience. And then that veteran's going to actually talk through that. If you haven't practiced that before, I think veterans don't really have an easy time talking about themselves. It's all kind of about we, or I was with the unit, or we did this, or we did that, but what did you do? How did you contribute? And do that in like 3 sentences or less. That's tough. So there's some videos there. I think it would be good for you to just to thumb through those and look at that. But what I did is I cut some things out of there. This, by the way, was a first lieutenant. He was getting out. He was in Afghanistan, coincidentally, so all of our communications was over email. And he was sending me this resume. He said, Ron, can you help me out with this? This is the paper that you have. But this is the first, he basically took a long time crafting this resume. So this is the first bullet, right? Planned advising operations for a 35-person police advising team, which advised a 600-member Afghan police force. Okay. So if I was an employer that was in the business of hiring police advisors, this would be an attractive bait. But Citi is not in that business. So I said, and by the way, I've made in bold letters, maybe those buzzwords that might show up on a search. Look at this is his writing, by the way. This isn't me writing it. Just after us talking about over and over what he needs to do, grab some meat, right? Still has numbers in there, a little bit more numbers, right? But conduct a district-wide employee accountability audit. Forget about inspections. Nobody's asking for inspections in Citi. They want auditors. Same thing. You have a standard, you take a look, did you meet that standard? Yes or no. And then what do I do about it? That's an audit. Use these words. These are civilian words. For a 600-member Afghan police force, which identified and corrected inefficiencies, everybody in this room has done that, where you're, correcting other service members, or unauthorized absences in 25% of the workforce. So throwing out another metric there that says there's about 25% of the workforce, there were some inefficiencies there. Another example. Planned, coordinated, and led over 80 combat operations. That's great if I'm in the business of hiring people that are planning combat operations, but I'm not. We're a financial institution. So let me look at some more buzzwords. Develop and implemented a bilingual, culturally targeted advisor program that increased accuracy and timeliness of significant event reporting. This effort resulted in, that's key words, resulted in greater information sharing between Afghan security forces. So here at Citi, we're a global organization. We value folks who have navigated various cultures. They're diverse, but they also have knowledge of how lending works, or lack thereof, in Afghanistan and these Arab cultures. This individual knew that. He was in charge of all of the disbursement for the Afghan force, and they did some advising. There's so much in there, again, looking at these buzzwords. And the last one, paid 300 Afghan local police monthly salaries. So I said, okay, this is closer. So if I'm in the company in charge of making payroll, and if you want to do that for a living, keep it like that. And he said, I don't want to do payroll. So what do you do? I mean, every piece of bait on that paper has to be designed to catch fish, and this is not going to do it. It's not what he wanted to do. So we talked about here, restructuring. Restructured district-wide payment procedures for 300 Afghan local police. Again, payments. We're in the banking business. We make payments. Shifting responsibility for $500,000 in annual compensation from U.S. to Afghan government. And government there, I've highlighted because I think the strength of everybody in this room is in the public sector. You have a lot of knowledge about how governments work. And if you're not looking at public sector businesses, these Avis and Budget that might rent, have big rental programs to the U.S. government, or Citibank that has a credit card that you probably all have used. These are public sector businesses. Guess what? You can walk into the Pentagon and you're probably not going to be afraid. And you can tell the difference between a corporal and a colonel, where a lot of people don't. You have value, right? So you've got to figure out where to apply that and how to put it on there. Okay. So I do have a couple more minutes here. I know this is quick and dirty, but I did want to bring out some salient points. What questions might you have? And feel free to shout it out. I've got about 10 minutes, I believe. Yeah.
What, if any, programs are out there? Thank you. Are we on? I'm a Marine. I should be able to talk about.
They're recording it, actually. so
Are they? Okay,
you're on.
gotcha.
Yeah.
One of the key, I guess, even if it's just perceived, stumbling blocks, is trying to move from what might be a VP or senior VP position in the military and trying to relate that to what your counterpart in the corporate sector would be doing, or the expectations, that kind of stuff. I believe Citi has some training programs at different levels to include C-level. Are you aware of any such programs that are available to us to just kind of get a little more used to what would be expected of your cultural counterpart?
Let me see if I understand your question. So are you asking how you can learn more about what a VP does and if that's appropriate level for you to?
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Well, there's a couple pieces here. Again, let me go back to the recruiter. This is something I want to make sure that I'm clear about. Recruiters are not used car salespeople. They're not there to get you in at the cheapest price. They're there to recruit the right person for that role. So what I would suggest is, in your networking, if there's a job that you feel that you would be right for, get on the phone with the recruiter. Have them look at your resume. Say, I've got 20 years of experience, or whatever the case may be. What's the title for this? Is that appropriate for me? Because what the recruiter doesn't want to do, right? So the recruiter is looking to get the most qualified person the quickest. That's how they're paid. That's their job. If you leave after 6 months because you got hired at a position that was too junior, that's bad on the recruiter. And they keep these metrics. That's why referrals, by the way, are the best. If you look at the data, people who are referred are likely to stay over 3 years, nearly double those that are sourced by a career board. So your people that are referring you, those people who you're talking to, anybody in the organization, let's say, tomorrow you want to have a cup of coffee with me, you want to run down what all these titles mean: analyst, associate, VP. I can run it down to very quickly. But what a VP is at Citi may not be the same as the VP at GE Capital. And I've had to, on occasion, talk to some of our colleagues when we're dealing with, like, let's say, in these big forums, they're talking about equivalent roles at GE, and the GE, recruiter said, no, we use the term manager. Oh, okay, right? So each one of these companies, a good point, each one of these companies are different, and you have to learn what those mean so that, you don't take a job that's too far down. Now, what I would say this is as well, and maybe I want to make this point, I would like you to make sure that you understand what your expectations should be. Okay? I'm not saying don't swing for the fences. You should. But look at it the other way. And I used this metaphor this morning. If I'm a pilot, I wasn't a pilot in the Marines, but if I was, and I was looking at maybe the squadron commander hiring a maintenance officer, and his choices are somebody that's been a maintenance officer, not on planes that I fly, but maybe in helicopters, or somebody that's in the infantry that is really motivated to be a maintenance officer. Which one would I feel comfortable getting in a plane? Probably the maintenance officer that's doing it in another setting, right? If that person in the infantry wants to come be a maintenance officer, and if I was a commander, I'd say, fine, but you need to take a step. I need to have you learn some stuff first. You have great qualities, but you need to learn some stuff first, and we'll shoot you up quicker. So I'm not saying, okay, right now, let's see, I'm a major lieutenant colonel. That's going to be equivalent at Citi, senior VP director. Senior VPs, directors, they manage millions of dollars at Citi, billions of dollars potentially. They've been doing it for a long time. There is no way that you're going to get hired at an equivalent position. It is what it is. You can, go down just a bit with the expectations of a steeper career trajectory. But it's, have it in your head, it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to get there. You'll get there quicker. But that's the other piece. So in that discussion about what would be an equal, maybe an equivalent experience level, I just wanted to keep that in mind. Great question. Okay. One more, or is that it, Scott?
You can do one more.
I don't know if there is another question. Sure.
Mr. Lobato, can you just give us a brief synopsis of what your transition was like out of the Marines into your current career field right now?
Yes, I'll do it in 60 seconds. Ready, go. My last job was, again, running the ROTC unit at the University of Texas. I didn't plan to get out. My wife and I think, made that decision together. And since I was there, I thought I'd get an education, probably like you all. I used the GI Bill, thank goodness that was available. But to be honest with you, I did a lot of soul searching, same thing. And I threw a lot of lines in the water. And I went to the University of Texas because I wanted to get into energy. There was no oil and gas company that was hiring me. I mean, I've got no experience in that. But who did was, the banking industry. They need conservative, disciplined, trustworthy people. And I did get a few offers out of the end of the thing, but they were all banks, which is great for me. I'm happy. But it took over a year. When I started applying and looking into this whole process, took over a year. I applied to over 120 jobs. I got interviewed 12 times, and I received 3 offers. 120, 1 year, and 3 at the master's degree level. It's tough. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. It's not easy. So does that answer your question? Yeah. All right. I'm going to stick around for a little bit afterwards. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ron. Great job. Appreciate it.
My name is Ron Lobato, and I work at Citi, and I was in the Marines for a number of years, and then transitioned directly to my job here at Citi. Very difficult process, actually a lot harder than I thought, and it took me better part of a year, I would say, and probably applied to over 120 individual jobs. I flew all around the United States. I was in Texas at the time. And out of the 120 jobs that I considered and applied for, I got about 12 interviews and 3 offers. 120 to 3. I went to a service academy. I've been in the top of my class in everything for the most part that I've participated in, to include my MBA program, which is a top 10 program. And I was shocked at how difficult it was. So since I got to Citi, what I've tried to do is share with folks the trials, and I've actually tried to learn how it works from the inside. So what I hope to do today is to dispel some myths for you. I've got a half hour, and I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes or so, and then allow you to ask questions, and you should please feel free to do so. Let me just go ahead and start out here. And I'm going to start my timer so I don't forget. Recruiters are the gatekeepers. I think typically folks don't understand how it works. You go to these things, you meet people, you go to hiring fairs and you meet people, you apply online in some sporadic way, and you don't really know where your resume goes, you don't get a call, if you interview you don't get a call back. It's frustrating. So let me try to dispel it. Okay, so recruiters, they're not the used car salesman that I think some folks think they are. And you particularly start getting introduced to this when you're talking salary negotiations and whatnot. You give them a price range and you're just kind of picking it out of the sky, or you might have had somebody give you advice about what compensation should be, and then they you just don't know where to stand. So the recruiters. And I'm going to explain in a little more detail actually what their job is. Well, maybe I'll preface this with a different metaphor. So how many of y'all fish? Anybody? There's like 5 rednecks, including me, in the group. Okay, so you don't have to fish to get this metaphor, but let me just put it to you this way. The recruiters, their job is to man the gate. They only let in the resumes they feel are a fit. Okay? For you to be able to get past that gatekeeper, you have to explain on paper, they're not even going to know you, you're going to be in a pile of hundreds. For you to get past the gatekeeper, you have to have a specific verbiage, specific things on your resume. It's not the chronology of Ron Lobato and what I've done in my life and how proud I am, but you're trying to get a job. So the fishing metaphor. Those that go fishing, when you go fishing, those maybe it's educational as well. So resume skills and fishing knowledge. When you go fishing, before you go fishing, you determine what you're going to fish for. And there may be one type of fish you're specifically interested in. So in New York, trout season started April 1st. I was very excited for that. So I get my little silver spoon lure, get my tackle box specifically designed to catch trout, and I take my daughter and we go start fishing in the creeks and lakes around here. Well, if I tried to bring bait that was designed to catch a shark, and I go throw that in the water, how successful would that be? Or if I just put a worm on a hook and said, I don't really care about what size this hook is, because I'm going to try to catch anything. I'm going to throw my line in the water and see what comes up. You'll probably catch a boot or a tin can. And so the metaphor is this. Your resume and the language on it has to be designed for a specific purpose, for a specific fish that you want to catch. And what I mean by that is, every one of these companies use different language. Within each company, you have different jobs. So for a recruiter that's recruiting, for a particular job, they're going to look for specific bait. Do you have that bait on your resume? That's really the question. If you do, then you can likely get past the gatekeeper. But there's another thing in there as well, and I've heard veterans talk about this mythical, computer system that I apply online and it reads my resume and looks for keywords, and I never make it past, and I never get a call back, so I assume like I'm getting blocked by this secret software program. You've heard that, right? I'm seeing people smile. You've heard. I've heard. I was told that, right? And I actually had a Marine one time, as I was mentoring him, said, well, wait, don't change it into PDF because I've got a whole bunch of, words at the bottom of my resume that you can't see, and I've written them in white font because I've heard about this machine. I'm not kidding you. And these are like educated officers, right? You've heard that. So let me tell you about, I thought I'd talk to a recruiter earlier this week and ask this person that I'm very close to here at Citi. And I said, Michael, when you go into these systems, we use Taleo at Citi, as does probably most companies that you're dropping your resume with. That's the system when you log into citi.jobs.com or whatever the website is. We use the Taleo system. So he says, in Taleo, and by the way, Monster.com and a lot of these other job boards, he said he's got a search function. When he goes in as a recruiter, he can search. So he said, if I've got a job and I'm trying to hire a painter, I'm going to go ahead, and by the way, I'm going to post this job as a recruiter, post it, write a description. Everybody that applies to that, I've got a bin of like 500, right, as a recruiter. I'm going to do a search that says painter, and it's going to screen out every resume. Or in other words, it's like your Google searches. If you want to learn about banana trees, all you're going to get is the results for banana trees. We all do it, right? So it's not some crazy system, but the point is this. Some use that search function. This individual actually doesn't. He looks through it personally. He doesn't really trust that because he's seen instances where he lost good candidates because they didn't have the right word that he was searching for. So he wasn't a believer in it. Some people are, but that's the actual what's happening behind the scenes. So his advice to me, which I'm now passing on to you, is the industry terms are important. If he's hiring for a job that manages liquidity for the bank, the word liquidity must be in your resume. Or, there's too many applicants that manage liquidity, and it's all over that sucker. So So that's really what I want to start it out with, right? Forget about all the details about your specific resume. You got to figure out who it's going to and how do you get past that. But there's another way. Apologies for those in the very back that cannot see this, but let me just explain it to you in very simple terms. On the left-hand side, these are all of the applications for over 600 companies from 2007 to 2012. All the applicants. I want you to focus on the left-hand side of the screen where there's a green sliver. That green sliver represents, out of all the applicants that were submitted to all these companies over 5 years, 7%, it's actually 6.9, but 7% came through referrals. 7%. Okay? Let's go to this side. This is out of all the hires over 5 years. Now, the green sliver isn't the same. I don't know why this site didn't put it, but it's pink. That pink sliver right there is how many were hired out of the entire pie. You got 7% over there who actually go the route of being referred, and you get 40% of the entire pie. Those are pretty darn good odds. Now, I will say, in contrast, the pink on that side is a career board. So again, jobs@citi.com, 40% of the, or 32% of the applicants are applying via that way. And over here, the career site is 21%. You will double your success by using somebody to refer you. Okay? Doesn't mean you don't just, don't forget about the online path. There's a whole pie here. But if you are not using your network and getting somebody and asking them to refer you for the job that you want, you are already losing 40% of your opportunity. And that's the important part. So why are you here? Right? How do you leverage this? And let me get to the how part, because a lot of times we talk about what, but we don't talk about how. Well, before I get into that, let me talk about how. Veteran Advantage today. What should be your goal today? Your goal is not to come in here and shake hands with Ron Lobato because I have a job. I don't have a job, right? But I've got knowledge. I've been doing this for a little bit, and I can tell you what works and what doesn't work. Your goal should be grab every business card of every company and get every email address of every company here. Step one. Step two, after this conference, you write them and you say, I would like to be introduced to another veteran in your company. If you know what you want to do, sales, marketing, in big broad terms, throw that out there too. Because just like, probably everybody here, I've got hundreds of folks at Citi that are veterans. If you tell me you want to do technology, I got a guy in technology. If you want to do consumer bank and work at the bank branches, I got a guy over there too. If you want to do sales and trading, got guys there, right? But your goal is to get to a veteran in a company. Why? You first have to find out, do you want to work for that company? And I'm telling you, once you started a company, if you can grow your roots there, you'll have an easier opportunity for mobility. And what I mean by that is, if I go from this job, and it took me 6 months to a year to learn it, I leave because I don't really like the company, didn't really do a good job in vetting the company, and then I transfer to another job. Again, new network, new startup costs. There's, people getting laid off these days. You're at risk because you're the new guy. There's a lot of risk there. So for right now, this job environment, choosing the right company is important. So how do you choose the company? The same way you chose your service. I will tell you, as a Marine, by the way, I went to a different service academy, so I went to the Air Force Academy. I went to the Marine Corps because I was not a fit for the Air Force. I'm saying fact, right? My network, I spent 4 years in a service academy. I knew one guy, and it was the other knucklehead that came over with me, right? Versus the Naval Academy. They had hundreds in their network. The point I'm trying to make here is, I would not be a good fit for the Air Force, but because I didn't really do a good job anyway, choosing my college, I said, well, I want to be, I had this fancy dream in my head, but I never really asked a question about, what is your culture? When you go do these mock interviews and informationals, you should ask them that. What's your culture here? I can tell you at Citi what it is. It's very helpful, but it's very much sink or swim. It's entrepreneurial by nature. If you're a sink or swim person, this is a good culture for you. There is no rule book. You're going to figure it out the hard way. And that's just what it is. Other organizations are a lot more helpful. They're a lot more deep in their organization. Right now I'm running a product. My product, hopefully bring in, by the end of April, a couple $100 million to City's balance sheet. I'm a team of one. You know? I'm doing everything, right? I'm sweeping the floors, I'm taking out the trash, and I'm talking to clients. Very entrepreneurial. I'm in a startup in this massive organization, right? But that's the culture. So the company is very important. The way that you determine, if you would go and I say, go the same way, you went to your recruiting centers or whatever, you went and talk to the Marines, you're like, wow, that guy's crazy. You go talk to the Air Force, like, okay, so this is more my speed. If you chose that first one, you didn't even ask the question, you would be in the wrong place and you would seek to get out of that. That's what you don't want to do when building your career. So the company's important. The second goal is get that person that's going to get you in that 40%. And hopefully, you're going to find out, once you find that company, right, so you're going to have to talk to multiple people in each one of these companies to figure out, is this the cultural fit for me? Once it is, when they ask me why I want to come to work for this company, you can explain it. The second piece of that is you can now network, now that you know that's where you want to go work, to the job that you want. Why? Because that is your bait. And if you can now, if you see that natural fit in company and job, you can take your background and what you do on a daily basis. If, so I had a guy come to talk to me about sales. I look at his resume, he said, I want to do something, I'm passionate about sales. I'm like, you haven't even sold Girl Scout cookies. There's nothing on here with sales. How are you passionate about that? I got it. You've been toting a gun for 4 years, right? I understand that. But nothing in your off time would indicate that you're passionate about sales. So there is no story there, I'm telling you. You're running up against a brick wall unless you can somehow turn your resume into that. Other guys say, I want to go into sales and trading. I'm like, okay, so fine. What are you interested in? What's the market trading at today? No natural interest. Versus somebody that eats and sleeps this stuff. So I'd say there's a natural interest in there for you. You got to build that out. And the way to do that is to find the veteran in the company and explore in more detail. So let's talk about, let's see how much time I have. The last piece here. I've got about 5 minutes to go through this last piece, and then I'll have about 10 minutes for questions. All right, so I worked with some folks here at Citi, as well as NBC Publishing, the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, which I hope every one of you are involved in that organization, and the Military Spouse Corporate Career Network. The four of us teamed up for about 9 months and just really helped out an author that wrote this book. This is free, guys, free. And a lot of people contributed to it. This next part, I've handed out some handouts. If you don't have one, if you can please pass it to somebody behind you if you don't have them. But if not, everything in this handout is in this book. I'm only going to go over a couple of things. But this is indicative. This is the how-to guide. This is also an electronic book. You can download it on iTunes or Amazon. It's got videos. Went to IAVA, got some sergeant. We said, hey, would you be an actor? And they actually show what you do. All right, so once you get past the gatekeeper, you go to your interview, and you get that question, walk me through your resume. You get a sample to see somebody answer that. What I typically see from veterans is, this is a story of my life, none of which relates to what I'm trying to hire for. And you don't know that you screwed it up until you've screwed it up. And I'm telling you, that's not the best way to do it. So, I know. All right, I didn't get Heroes Get Hired. I was in University of Texas, following a bunch of other schmucks around. All right, so this, on the left side, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you 3 examples of resumes. On the left side is what this lieutenant had. By the way, this lieutenant was in Afghanistan. He was emailing me back and forth and say, hey, Ron, could you help me with my resume? I'm trying to get in the city. No problem. No problem. So this is his bullet, right? So those who can't see it or can't read it, this is what the bullet said before. Planned advising operations for a 35-person police advising team, which advised a 600-member Afghan police force. If I was in the business of hiring police advisors, this guy would rock it. I'm a bank. I don't care about Afghan police force. So on the right side, I was asking him over and over, what did you do? Well, I'd go out and I'd do inspections. I'm like, okay, so inspections, we don't hire anybody here that's doing inspecting, but we do hire auditors. And you know what they do? They go and look how screwed up your process is. You know? So if you're out of line, I just audited you, right? But you never find a gunny saying, you know, get in line and line up for an audit. But that's the way you got to think. You know why? Because they're going to do a search audit. Take inspections out of there. Maintained, I see maintained on resumes like you wouldn't believe. You know what a maintenance person is here? You'll see in our restroom if you go out after this. That's maintenance. Now, there are words that resonate with civilians, but what we use, I'm telling you right now, is not the right bait. So this is what it reads. Conducted district-wide employee accountability audit for 600-member Afghan police force, which identified and corrected inefficiencies in 25% of the workforce. Wow, you're talking about 600, and you corrected an inefficient process for 25% of that? Hey, that's not a bad result out of an audit. And I could probably figure out some way how that would apply. That's more, you know, business speak. Another example. Same guy. Planned, coordinated, and led over 80 combat operations. Led. All right, so lead is LED. I'm not kidding you. Well, I mean, that's lead, but it's like a lead rod. Okay, so planned, coordinated, and led over 80 combat operations. Yeah, again, you guys know where I'm going with this, right? This is what he put in. I didn't rewrite this, he did, right? The only way to do this is if you write this. This is your own words. Develop and implemented a bilingual, culturally targeted advisor program that increased accuracy and timeliness of significant event reporting. This effort resulted in greater information sharing between Afghan security forces. So the ones in bold, the letters in bold, are buzzwords, are industry words, implementing something. We have implementers. That's what they do, implementation manager. Like, that's a job, an implementation manager. So if I was hiring for an implementation manager, your resume would show up if you actually, they would see this word. The only way you're going to know this is if you talk to somebody in the company and they're telling you these words. Last one. Paid 300 Afghan local police monthly salaries. And I kind of wrote him for this one. I'm like, what are you trying to tell me as an employer? You know, you want to make payroll? Is that, I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to be a jerk. The bait you're using is for somebody that's hiring for you to come in and make payments to people for their salaries. If you don't want to do that, don't put it on the paper. You're confusing the entire message. So he said, okay, fine. Restructured, district-wide payment procedure. By the way, there's only certain things that you've done in your life, so you got to figure out a way to say it. Right? Restructured district-wide payment procedures for 300 Afghan local police, shifting responsibility for $500,000 in annual compensation from U.S. to Afghan government. I'm a bank. We do payments for a living. Payments is a word I use every day. Restructuring. If you haven't heard, the banks are restructuring right now. Right? Very relevant. And one of our biggest clients is the U.S. government, and you know because you're probably carrying a Citibank credit card. So now we've got about 10 minutes left, and I put my email down here. Please write it down. Please email me. I've got a team of about 100 people in 26 different cities, 26 cities in the United States who have offered to help out everybody in this room. I would love to dump 150 resumes into my colleague's lap who volunteered to distribute this because he hasn't been getting any work. We need you guys to, get on board. So send me your resume. I'll forward it right over to Grant. He'll forward it to somebody in the U.S. that can help you walk through this stuff. And again, you got to use that person-to-person network. Most of the 9/11 folks that I work with are far too reliant on technology. If you want a referral, it's a face-to-face job or over-the-phone to over-the-phone job. Okay? All right, so that's my spiel. I've got about 10 minutes left for questions. Please feel free. Yeah.
do we still refer our resumes if it's still not within the financial or the banking industry? If you're looking maybe on the Intel side or anything like that, would your team would also be able to help on that part?
Intel, what kind of intel?
Intelligence, government agencies, things like that.
Yeah. Do you think we have intelligence here in the bank?
I think so.
Well, not as a term. I mean, that's debatable, right? As an adjective or whatever.
Thank you.
There's an area of the bank. This is thank you for that question. This is going to drive the point home. Anti-money laundering is one of the biggest issues and concerns that we have. We have teams, Intel guys, that put together networks to try to figure out who is that person or persons in Colombia that are laundering money. We're seeing these really crazy payment streams, low dollar amounts, repeatedly from A to B. What's going on there? Intel guys, I had a guy who runs our City Security and Investigative Services, CSIS, out of London. And he said, Ron, I need intelligence guys. And I said, okay. And I got him a couple. Now, you may not want to work at a bank, but if your statement was an assumption that we don't employ your specialty, again, there's a lot of stuff to learn. And I think, you know, speaking to these veterans can help you out. And the pay's pretty darn good at a bank, so better than the U.S. government, I would assume. But yes, please do. If you want to send me your resume, yeah, we'll circulate it. Look, the goal is to get your name in front of somebody. Even though I may not know that company that you want to go work for or government entity, if you want to go work for a government entity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it to my buddy down in Washington, D.C., who's in the public sector group, that all they do in sales is talk to public entities. What a great guy to have, right? Because maybe one of his clients, knowing that he's a former military guy, has expressed interest. Hey, if you got anybody, you know, ever, send me the resume. I'm happy to take a look. We get that all the time. But what do you do with that if, you know, he's in D.C., he doesn't have a large volume? So it doesn't really matter if you want to go to Citibank or not. Send me your stuff. We'll get your name out there. The more people that know that you're looking for work, and if you can define to them what it is that you want to do, then you're going to be better for that. So it might be just one step, and it'll get you where you want to go. Well, another question. We've got a good amount of time here still. Yes.
So I asked,
It's being recorded, so
okay.
please use the...
William Jimenez, Air Force veteran. So sorry about the Academy Marine thing.
No.
So one of the questions I asked in the prior panel was, how do you turn the intangibles into something tangible on the resume, right? So a lot of us have a lot of, again, intangible skills in terms of things we've done either while deployed or while on the job that don't necessarily translate really well, or we may not know how to translate them really well. At least I don't know how to translate them on the resume. So.
That's right. Intangibles are tough, and a lot of times, I mean, look, I think if I talk to people, they know that you know, everybody in this room is coming with something a little bit special. And how do you change that? And I had actually a young man at Baruch College. He was like visibly frustrated at the last year or two trying to find a job. He's like, I'm just a dumb grunt. What in the world am I going to put on my resume? And I said, look, my part of the business where I work in this Treasury Solutions business, Treasury Solutions and banking in general is going high tech. I've done a lot of work with technology. I've done a lot of work with encrypted technology. Have you done a lot of work with encrypted technology? Anybody that's talked on a radio or carried one can now put on their resume, blah, 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 with high cryptic state-of-the-art technology, right? If you're applying for a tech job. So some of this stuff, it's in there. I think it just takes conversations to pull out and talk through. And I put this back up because we've wrote a book about it. And this is only, you know, a 30-minute spiel with like 5 minutes of examples, but I've got a whole book here. And I put together a matrix that says, you use this word, I'm telling you to use that word. Take a peek, it's free. If you think it's junk, write me and tell me what you think about it is junk. Because my goal is to make something helpful. We don't get anything for sales. There's nothing in it for me. I wish there was. Nor city. You don't see, other than these two individuals on the front, they're city employees. City's not plastered all over this thing. This is a very humble endeavor. So please take a look at this. There's more details in there that'll tell you the how. But the true way is to really sit down with a veteran who's now working at a job that you want to do, that knows the lingo and how to translate your resume into that lingo. Surefire way. And then you can ask him, hey, would you refer me to the recruiter? I'm not kidding. You think I'm kidding? You have to ask. If you don't ask, they're not going to volunteer. They may not even think to volunteer. But until you say, hey, I just applied for this job requisition number. Could you forward this to your recruiter? You know what they'll say? Oh, you should have said something. I've got an internal system that I can refer you. And by the way, some jobs at Citi, I get paid. I could get paid up to $5,000 for referring you. They make different incentives. Again, the reason why is because referrals, they stay the longest, they get hired the quickest, and generally speaking, they're the person that we're looking for. One more? Yeah?
Okay. All right, sir. Two-part question.
Please.
First part, did you go to Air Force Academy because you saw Tom Cruise on Top Gun? You kind of had a dream?
Yeah, you know, you laugh, it was Iron Eagle. At the end of that movie, they sent him to
enough.
Colorado Springs, didn't they? I'm not, you think I'm kidding. That's the dumb decision that you make in life. You're like, man, I want to be Iron Eagle. And then you're standing there, you're not Iron Eagle. But you laugh because some of you guys tried out for what, SEALs or something because you saw some movie? All right.
Second part, would you advise for or against hiring resume writing services? Sort of, spruce up your resume?
Oh, that's a great question. We've got a section in here about using some of these Orion groups and, I don't know, these other organizations that specialize in military folks. If I was, would I recommend it? You're going to have to make your own decision based on how junky your resume is. If you're not getting any fish on the bait you're throwing out, you may need to ask for some help and pay somebody. But I think you have the intelligence to do it yourself. May take just a little bit more work, and I think those words are going to come from you. So when you're looking at the resume, you're sitting down in front of somebody, they're going to say, wow, Ron, this is a great bullet. Tell me more about that. Well, you didn't even come up with the language. So, it's somebody that you sent that you may not even see or talk to. I've seen these, right? I was considering this. You email it, you pay them like $50. They somehow turn it into something and send it back to you, right? I've never used it. I considered it, but I didn't. I don't think that's the right way because it's not your words. About those other organizations, the headhunters that are going to bring you in and shop you around to these various, medical sales, pharmaceutical sales places or whatever, it's not coming out of your paycheck. If they place you, they get a cut, but it's not coming out of your paycheck. So, I would say that's probably the last step because they're going to put you in something that's very similar to the military. Is that it? Okay. I'm going to stick around just for a couple minutes. If you do have an individual question, let's sneak back there. I'll give you my card and answer any individual questions. Thank you.